On this episode of This Week in Space, we're talking about the space workers' pipeline on and off Earth. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 135, recorded on November 1st, 2024, the Spacer Pipeline. Hello and welcome to This Week in Space, the Spacer Pipeline edition. And if you don't know what that is, it's developing a space workforce. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief at Astro Magazine, and I'm joined as always by my innovating friend Tarek Malik, editor-in-chief at space.com. Hello, my friend.
Hello, Rod. Hello. Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day and happy day before Day of the Dead.
No, well, it's the day. It's tonight and tomorrow. So,
oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's like at sundown. So, El Dia de los Muertos.
Ooh, look at you.
Let's all happy post Halloween to everybody that celebrates too. It's very great. We got a lot of candy here in fabulous northern New Jersey. So.
All right. Well, now that we've done speaking to your inner 9-year-old, today we're going to speak further to Dr. Rick Jenet, who's a founder and scientist entrepreneur, of Expanding Frontiers, which is an organization that works with underserved communities for high-tech and space careers and businesses in South Texas, down near Brownsville. So really looking forward to that. But before we do, I need to remind you all to please do us a solid. Make sure to like us, subscribe, and do all that other podcast stuff for us because we're counting on your support. And of course, joining Club Twit wouldn't be amiss either. And now, drum roll, our space joke from listener Dale Baker's son, Brock Baker.
Brock!
Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod.
Why does the moon go across the sky each night?
I don't know, Rod. Why does the moon go across the sky?
To get to the other tide.
That's good. That's a good Brock.
Actually.
That's a good one. I thought Brock is an awesome name. That's like an astronaut sci-fi golden age name.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Like Brent Jet. Best astronaut name ever, Brent Jet. So
rock strong. Now, I've heard that some folks want to wander out into the high tide and allow it to take them into oblivion whenever it's joke time in this show. But you can help that from happening. Send your best, worst, or most indifferent space joke to us at twis@twit.tv. Quick show note. We got a email from Steve Sheridan. Rod and Tarek, I really enjoyed your episode with Ben Dickow. Was excited to hear his discussion about the new Inspiration mock-up shuttle facility. Mm-hmm. I listened pretty closely, but didn't hear any talk about an opening date. Checked the museum website and couldn't find that either. I'd like to know when it opens. Do you know what that is? And the answer is about 18 months, God willing, and the river don't rise, as John Wayne used to say. So I'd say within 2 years, knowing how things go with museums and municipalities and all that, but maybe sooner.
Yeah, they got to build the building. They got to get all the ducks in a row, all that fun stuff.
But stay tuned with us, and we won't let you miss out on it. All right, let's do some headlines.
Yes.
Headline news.
I actually shut up long enough to let it play this week.
Yeah.
All right. So
like
this may not be the most important headline, but I thought it was the coolest. Voyager phones back home on its old landline.
That's right. That's right. So, this is from space.com, this one here, but a lot of other folks also covered it. And JPL let us know, but Voyager 1, the farthest flung spacecraft that we have out there in interstellar space, it had a problem last month, just a couple weeks ago. It had a command that got sent through the Deep Space Network that had it turn off a heater, and then that issue led to its primary X-band transmitter turning off, and it switched over to another one that uses less power, this backup one, and they were able to get it to bounce back using a radio transmitter that they haven't used since 1981. Now, we got to do the math for that because it's 2024 right now. So what is that? 81, that's 33 years?
Remember
right?
why I didn't major in astronomy?
Did I get that right? Someone write in to tell me if I got that right or not. So, man, the stuff that I leave turned off for 33 years, like I go back to it and the batteries have all leaked out and like destroyed the whole thing. And the fact that this spacecraft was able to make that transfer and keep phoning home was pretty amazing. And it's just,
well, the fact that it works at all.
I know, right? I mean, it's just sitting there doing its thing out there, and they had that really scary kind of communications outage from the computer issues that they had over the last year, and they're getting really close, a few years shy of 50 years. They're hoping it's going to get that long. So.
I just got a question from somebody on Discord asking if I have live jellyfish behind me.
That's
Those
right.
are actually little aliens for the planet Zontar, otherwise known as fake jellyfish, in a little enclosure. So there's no non-invertebrate animal cruelty here. Okay. Now, this is kind of a big one. China's Sputnik moment, courtesy of our friend Leonard David, I think also on space.com. Yes.
Yeah, this was, but I believe that he actually also wrote this for his own publication too, which is, what is it, leonarddavid.com? Space, he's the outer space news, I think it's outer space news. So anyway.
He's got some weird title for it. I can't remember what it is. Yeah.
But yeah, so China has moved up its plans for a Mars sample return mission and wants to do it before the United States and NASA are able to do it. So they're looking to try to get it before NASA's big 2040 deadline. And then I guess they're going to try to do it for less than $11 billion that NASA already thinks it's going to cost.
Okay, now wait, just to be fair, if you talk to the people on the JPL side, they did say as low as 6.5 billion, as high as 11. So that number was kind of pulled out of the card deck a little unceremoniously, but yeah.
Yeah, but this came out of China's second International Deep Space Exploration Conference. They just had it in September, and I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so I do apologize to everyone out there. Huangshan City in Anhui, and the province, I apologize again, where they said that they're moving.
Most of their provinces are pronounced in French, but that's okay. We'll ask Rick when he gets here because he speaks Chinese.
So I'll have to ask Jasmine as well. Lu Zhejiang, the chief designer for their Mars sample return mission, which is Tianwen 3 is what it's called. They say they're going to launch it now in 2028, which is a couple years previously than scheduled. So they basically moved it up a Mars launch cycle because they think that they're going to be able to do that and then get the samples back that same year, which sounds crazy that they'd be able to do that. But I guess the plan here is to take to launch two different missions on two Long March 5 rockets. Get there, so you've got your carrier and your lander spacecraft, and then you have your return vehicle spacecraft, and in that same window, so you use the whole transit window that you're able to get back on a direct return a lot easier than if you had to wait like another 2 years, to come back again. So it's very interesting. They've got a few candidate landing spots that meet up their engineering constraints. I'm doing air quotes for people who aren't watching the video.
Engineering constraints mean flat and safe. Yeah.
It says engineering constraints that do not. Let's see, they have. I missed this all wrong.
Spit it out.
Engineering constraints that don't respect national boundaries. So it's not about like landing near a previous lander. It's about landing in a place where it's safe and scientifically interesting to do so. But they'll very much follow that standard sample return thing where you have your lander, you're collecting samples, your launch, rendezvous, docking in Mars orbit, and then returning them direct to Earth. Whether or not it includes a rover, which is a lot more complication to go off and do something, I think it's safe to say that they may not do that. They didn't do that with the Chang'e 5 mission and the Chang'e 6 missions. They kind of scooped them with the lander itself. That's a lot of dependability that they've proven at the moon, and it's safe to assume that they'd use that same technology that they know works on Mars as well. So,
and it's kind of like what the U.S. did in the 60s and the Soviets to a degree, which is, let's go down, get a grab sample, and in this case, bring it home. So it is important to note. And by the way, Leonard's site is Inside Outer Space.
Inside Outer Space. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
You're welcome.
A bit of a brain seize there.
But they're kind of going to do, we think, the equivalent of a contingency sample, which is let's go down, get what we can get without too much complication. Maybe a rover, but probably not going very far because their rovers haven't lasted very long yet, and then bring it back, as opposed to the NASA plan, which kind of typical in NASA fashion, got very big and very complicated because they wanted to bring back all the drill core samples that Curiosity has taken over the Perseverance has taken over the years. And what was never clear to me in that plan was whether they were just going to go for the ones being carried on the rover or try and pick up the ones dropped. And I guess part of that depended on whether they could get the rover maneuvered to the sample return lander and manage to transfer them all over, or if they were going to have to go pick them up at the drop sites, which is a lot more complicated. And the last time I was at JPL on the robotics side, I saw a guy working with the retrieval arm for the fetch rover when they were still going to have a fetch rover. And, the complication involved, when you think about it, it's like, well, you just go get it, right? It's like, no, you have to have an arm with, I think, 6 degrees of freedom, and it's got to be able to do this and reach over its shoulder and pick the thing up. And if it's rolled under a rock, you got to be able to sneak it out of there and all that. So it's a big, complicated deal, which is why you get up into the James Webb Space Telescope budget range. And if anybody cares about the opinions of this show, just do it, okay?
Yeah,
just go get our samples, because when Perseverance launched and we had heard about this sample gathering ability, and yet there was no yet approved mission or budget to go get them, it was like, please don't do what I think you're going to do, which is get halfway downstream and go, gosh, this is expensive, let's stop. So NASA,
where have we heard that before? Right?
Go get those darn samples. Okay, last one. Boeing for sale.
Or is
it going to happen, buddy?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This one actually came out of the Wall Street Journal this week or just over last week. But it looks like the new CEO of Boeing, who I think took over the summer, and this is from this is a subscription story, but we picked it up too. But they're looking at potentially like spinning off and selling the space line, the space business at Boeing, and
except for SLS.
Except for SLS, yeah. This is the Starliner stuff. This is the other bits of and bobs, because SLS is a big contract that already works, right? So
at great expense.
And this is something that I think you and I talked about in the past, when we were wondering what was going to happen with Starliner. Like, when's the next mission going to fly? Like, what are they going to do? So this could have a lot of impact on that program there, depending on if they think it's viable to sell that line of their business. And then also if the people that decide that it's worth it for them to pick it up want to keep that stuff going forward.
And that's a really big question, isn't it? It's like, okay, we've got, how can I put this kindly? We've got this Corvair of a spacecraft, to put it back in 1960s terms, so far anyway. It works. It's worked out. It just doesn't work properly yet. And to me, a complete, amateur outside observer on this kind of thing. But, the people that have the money that don't yet have a spacecraft are Blue Origin. They've got a moon lander they're working on, 2 of them, I think. But as far as I know, they don't have a crewed spacecraft beyond what they use on New Shepard, which probably wouldn't be something you'd want to have in orbit for extended times with those great big windows. Could they reconfigure it? Sure. Or could they maybe save some money by doing a fire sale over at Boeing and getting the Starliner? One wonders. Yeah,
it's interesting because as others have picked up, the Wall Street Journal, had people familiar with the matter. They were confidential sources, and it's not just the SLS system that they would kind of keep, but also the commercial satellite stuff, which they've building the buses and whatnot. They would keep that too, and Boeing wasn't dishing on what their plans were, as you would expect. They don't comment or on rumors or speculation, is what their person said. But it would be interesting to see, like, if they if the fact that the space station is retiring, which a lot of work would be included in that space division sale, if that is a major factor in deciding to spin this off now, when we know that by the end of the decade there won't be a space station, to support as there was. Boeing built all of those huge things, that those trusses and whatnot on it to keep it all going, way back when. So it'll be interesting to see how this all pans out. Now, they're not the only group that is potentially up for sale. We've heard that ULA might be up for sale. Again, we haven't heard too much about that. I'm curious if they're waiting for the next Vulcan flight, but we'll have to see how these develop, because if both of those get sold, especially if it's to other competitors like the Blue Origins of the world, like someone else that is developing a different technology, then how does that going to mean? And is the market going to get smaller, or is NASA's need for independent access through different lines, which has been useful, with the stalls that we saw this summer? Is that going to actually be realized, or is it all going to get snapped up by one mega company? So,
all right. Hold on. The red line's ringing. Hello? Yes? Sorry. Okay. That was Bill Nelson. He says, stop talking about NASA. All right. End of headlines. We'll be back after this short break, so go nowhere with Dr. Rick Jenet. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Veeam. Without your data, your customers' trust turns to digital dust. That's why Veeam's data protection and ransomware recovery ensures that you can secure and restore your enterprise data wherever and whenever you need it, no matter what happens. As the #1 global market leader in data resilience, Veeam is trusted by over 77% of the Fortune 500 to keep their businesses running when digital disruptions like ransomware strike. That's because Veeam lets you back up and recover your data instantly across your entire cloud ecosystem, proactively detect malicious activity, remove the guesswork by automating your recovery plans and policies, and allows you to get real-time support from ransomware recovery experts. Data is the lifeblood of your business, so get data resilient with Veeam. Go to veeam.com to learn more. That's VEEAM.com. Veeam.com. We are back with Dr. Rick Jenet, and I'm going to, instead of reading off your CV, Rick, I'm just going to read your journey as I see it plotted out. So Tarek's going to ask you about your younger years and how you got interested in space. But
spoilers!
When I first got interested in this stuff myself, you were at MIT getting your undergraduate, and I think, were you getting your master's there or just your bachelor's?
Just my bachelor's.
Okay. Getting a bachelor's at MIT is like getting a PhD at Harvard. Then went on to Caltech to get a doctorate in astrophysics, which blows my mind because higher math blows my mind right up my right ear. Assume you did a couple of postdocs, ended up at JPL at one point.
Yep.
And then maybe skipping some steps, which I'll allow you to go through, but on to Brownsville and Expanding Frontiers. So can you kind of walk us through your career path here? Because this is pretty heady stuff.
Sure. Well, I guess I've always, one of the cases where I was always interested in space, just, from the get-go. I don't remember when I wasn't interested in space. And, maybe Star Wars inspired me. Maybe it was before that. It's hard to say. But I did actually see Star Wars in the movie theater before it was called Episode 4 or whatever they were doing with that. So, so that kind of dates me right there. Went to MIT. My degree was actually in physics. And because really, if going into astronomy and astrophysics, as you know, it's just, you usually go into something with physics or engineering or something like that, and then move from there. And then I had I did do a brief stint at the Center for Space Research. I actually worked on, a satellite mission. It's called the X-ray Timing Explorer. It lasted for like 10 years or so. Then eventually was put out of service, but a lot of great science came out of that. And then went to Caltech. It was one of these things where, well, I should apply. So let me go, apply. You apply to hundreds of schools, and occasionally one or two might return your call. or return the envelope. Remember when you had to actually mail in applications? That's
Right.
Yeah, that's a long in the past there.
And worse yet, you had to go get transcripts by hand.
Had to get transcripts, had to mail in the applications, all of that kind of. Had to get the letters from everyone and put it in the packet. Anyway, then I went to Caltech. Had an amazing time at Caltech. It just mentors of mine were top level scientists or Nobel Prize winners or whatever. It's just there'll be people walking around. It's just like, well, you're an interesting character. What did you do? I invented the strain gauge. Oh, okay. Is that all? Right. Things like that. So it was a fantastic experience. I then took a small stint in the oil and gas industry. I guess in the early 2000s. It was an amazing little time there. Worked for a group called Schlumberger, one of the big oil and gas consulting companies, and then came back to NASA JPL. So again, that was a fantastic and amazing place. It was 2003, 2004, and I got to see things that were heading, being shipped off to Mars, being packed up, and people in their bunny suits and that kind of stuff. I wasn't necessarily working on that. I just got to see it. I was working. I was over in the general relativity group doing stuff with pulsars and gravitational wave detection type things.
How cool
as one does.
I was going to say, how cool is it to be able to say I was in the general relativity group? I can barely remember what it means. Okay, sorry. Continue.
So through all of that, now, all right, I'll harken back. I actually started my career in my dad's butcher shop in Jamaica, Queens. So one of the first things is learn how to cut up a chicken, and the second thing you learn is how to deal with people. Two very important skills going through life. From that, it was, I guess, something that I got from my dad, the importance of giving back to the community. And the fact that the community is, that which supports you. He was very, he was very attuned to that. And matter of fact, the community definitely supported him, and it was a mutual, relationship between his business and the stuff he was doing there and the community. And I guess that rubbed off on me because I guess in my next steps in my career, I wanted to go to a place where I could have an impact in the community, but also do what I love to do. And I chose Brownsville, Texas. Now, the reasons for that was there was a budding astrophysics group there that was just kind of getting started. And then, they had a professorship position there at the University of Texas, Brownsville, and I went. And the people, the community that I saw there was a community that really wanted to become better than it was. Like they understood the value of education. They understood the value of working hard and making things happen. I saw that. I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. I would love to be able to be a part of that. And given that they, were starting to have this physics and astronomy department there, I said, hey, this could be fun. So, so I went basically from JPL down there. Beginnings of my career was basically connecting students from the high school level and the undergraduate level getting them excited about STEM careers through astronomy and astrophysics, basically using space as a way of getting them involved and interested and excited. I got an NSF Career Award, which helped to bring the world's largest radio telescope. At the time, that was the Arecibo Radio Observatory. Bring that to South Texas. Now, of course, nowadays, everything's done remotely. We all understand remote observations and how you do this and whatnot. Back then, it wasn't necessarily the case. So we were one of the first groups to do something like this. And I built a fully operational command and control room for the Arecibo Observatory on the campus.
Wow. Oh, that's cool.
And so got people excited about that, started to do that and whatnot. And really, to make a long story short, that created the first UT Center of Excellence for Space Exploration Development, the Center for Advanced Radio Astronomy down in South Texas. And that put us in a great position when a space company was, nosing around, trying to see if they should, make their home or one of their homes down in the South Texas area. And so that center and myself and my colleagues there, we were just in this great position where we could walk up to SpaceX and say, "Hey, let's do a project together." And that led to the spacecraft tracking and astronomical research into gigahertz astrophysical transient emission, Stargate. That was the first program and first real building that was down in Boca Chica Beach. A lot has evolved since then, but I can say that my involvement and what I had pushed there and so forth, that myself and my team were the ones responsible for building the SpaceX control room that happens to be down in South Texas.
No kidding.
So that was a lot of fun. I did get to shake Elon Musk's hand. Of course, he would have no idea who I am, but nonetheless, it was a great moment to see everyone come together around space. The students so one of the things we in the programs that we developed, public presentations were so important. So it wasn't just know your physics and know your mathematics, but it was how do you communicate this. And so when SpaceX was coming and giving their public forums, my students were at the head of the line, and they were the ones that were basically saying why it's so important that a company like SpaceX comes to South Texas and the impact that it'll have in the future and for everyone that is there, and basically, paving the way for a future for the communities of South Texas that's around space. Which, hey, that's a pretty amazing thing. So that led us to Expanding Frontiers. Felt that was the right time to start moving forward, looking at other ways in which we can get the community involved. Something that was important to us, still is important to us, is that we know what happens when big companies come in, right? They don't, rightfully so, they have their industry and they have their job to do, and that's what they have to focus on, right? And the question is, what's going to happen to everyone else that's there watching the rockets launch, right? They're going to be really excited. They're going to be like, how do I get involved in this? How do I, I'm seeing this happen. What can I do? And that's kind of where Expanding Frontiers comes in. We want to make sure that everyone in the South Texas region and Texas and the nation in general have the tools they need to participate in this new space economy that is, of course, that SpaceX and many other groups and many other in Texas that are really leading and making happen. So, so it's been a pretty exciting journey. I left out an awful lot, but I don't want too many yawns on this. So there you go.
Okay, that was great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and that's our show. No, just kidding. Let's jump to an ad real quick, and then we'll be back with Tarek's burning questions. Stand by.
Yeah, well, Rick, thank you for that, quick kind of like tour, I guess, of your career. My big question, my first question, usually when we have someone come in, is to find out how the space bug bit you in the first place. And you kind of mentioned a little bit there about Star Wars back when it was still just called Star Wars. And I'm wondering, was that it, or was there something else, something more like actual, like spacey, like a moon night, or something that really got little Ricky or Rick, sorry, I don't want to presume, excited about I guess about what the final frontier might hold. I mean, I'm just curious, kind of how you found space in the first place that first time.
Sure. So I can answer this along two lines. First line is kind of just what I thought it was when I was that age. Star Wars played a role, Star Trek played a role. Having the opportunity to go and listen to some astronauts at the time talking about various things. Matter of fact, I think it was Scott Carpenter that I saw.
Oh, wow.
Back, I don't know, it was, in the 70s at that time. And he had made some statement along the lines of, we don't need astronauts, we need PhDs. So, there you go. But the other path that I will say, and you don't realize this until you get a lot older, is the importance of your parents and the fact that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And the reason why you're exposed to this stuff is because, well, deep down, they were kind of really excited and interested about this, right? So I later found out that my parents were avid watchers of Star Trek when it was coming out before I was even born, right? When it's actually coming out on television. I find out, that at one point or another, my dad was actually, went to the Air Force and went through the whole initial training and stuff like that. And he tells this story about how he was sitting in his underwear after all the medical exams, and he was, I think he was like 20, not even that, something like that. And he was just thinking to himself, it's like, what am I doing? I have this amazing woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with. So I think, I don't think I want to join the Air Force. And then unfortunately they get married and a month later he gets drafted. But that's another,
oh dear.
that's another story. But, and another thing, my mom was a big traveler. She loved to travel. And I didn't learn this until, I don't know, maybe about 7 years ago or so. My mom, who is now 94, she was in her 80s at the time. She came to one of my presentations at the Houston Spaceport that we were having. It then was the Houston Technology Center, and I was there, and we had NASA representatives and so forth. And I was just talking about stuff that we're doing, Expanding Frontiers, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, all of a sudden afterwards, when it was kind of everyone was talking to everyone, I saw my mom talking to one of the NASA officials, right? And they were just having a conversation and so forth. And I think basically my mom asked her, it's just like, if you had the opportunity to go up, would you go up? And the woman was like, yeah, I'd go up. And the woman asked her, what about you? She said, I'd be there in a heartbeat. And I'm like, what? So, children always like to think that they were the ones that, had these ideas and this is the way, it's just them, especially in the US. But really, you're so involved, you're so influenced by those that are around you and your parents, especially at that age. So really if I'm going to answer the question truthfully, I say, why is it I did what I did and where I am? And it's because of the influence of two very amazing people that wanted the best for me and guided me towards this. So that's that.
No, that's great. That's great. And I tip my hat to you for the PhDs because, man, the math just to get out.
We've talked about that a lot on this show. We whine to each other about the moments we both discovered in our planned careers in science in the university level where the math caught up with us and it was like, oh, this is really bad. So that was the end of it for me at UCLA. I have a bunch of questions, but I think I'll just jump ahead here a little bit. So in listening to your journey here, we've got the PhD, the science background, doing hardcore research at JPL and other places. And then the next thing I know, you're in Texas and Expanding Frontiers shows up. Did you have a lot of background in nonprofits before that, or was this just kind of a leap of faith for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best way the really short answer is no, of course not. But then when you think about it a little bit further, I spent my entire life in nonprofits, right? Because it was just all in universities, except for that small stint in oil and gas. That was not a nonprofit. But everything else was basically in nonprofits, nonprofit educational institutions and so forth. So in that sense, that was, you just, when you're in that environment, you can't help but understand various things. But in terms of running a nonprofit and so forth, no, that was just it was a leap of faith. It was knowing that what we're doing is predominantly a benefit to the community, and that's the way we wanted to keep it. That the nonprofit was the way to go for this.
And for folks, Rick, who maybe aren't as familiar as I know that Rod and you are, when you're trying to describe Expanding Frontiers to them and like the mission as a nonprofit, both to the folks that are involved and then to the community as a whole, like what is for our listeners who are like live right now and will come later, what is the overarching goal? How do you structure it? How do you give back through Expanding Frontiers for that community in Brownsville, for the students, et cetera?
Sure. So our mission is to promote the innovation ecosystem in South Texas. It is we focus around space and oil and gas, or space and energy, I should say, because those are two big areas in Texas. And why would something like Expanding Frontiers? Why should it exist in South Texas, right? So if you were, say, anywhere else, say you were on the East Coast, you were in New York, or you're in Boston, or you're in San Francisco, California, and you wanted to learn about entrepreneurship, right? And I will challenge people to do this. You want to learn about entrepreneurship? Sit in a coffee shop, and what are you going to do? Just listen to people. And I've done this, when I was first started this, I'm like, I wonder if that's true. And I just did this. I just sit in coffee shops in New York or, in Boston over here or wherever in these places. And you start listening. It's like, oh yeah, I got this deal going on. I got, a couple of million that I want to get here. Or, I'm just entering my Series A over here. It's like, and then you have another group that's talking about, Gaussian statistics and all of this kind of stuff. It's like, it's there. It's in the culture. It's very easy to
I feel like, Rick, that we go to different coffee shops.
Well, he is in Boston.
No, that's right.
In New
that's
Jersey.
Right.
So,
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. But
no worries. Well, you just got to listen for it. It's just like, wow, this is that type of culture isn't quite there, especially when you're looking at unless you're looking at technology startups and you're looking for things that scale beyond the family or beyond the. There are entrepreneur trainings that talk about opening up a restaurant. Perfectly fine. Need restaurants, right? Or or cleaners or something like that. Perfectly fine. You need that. Community needs all of that in the ecosystem. But when it comes to, all right, I have a piece of technology that's sitting on NASA's shelf, and I want to take that and turn that into something that satisfies some value or adds some value. And then I want to figure out how I manufacture that. I want to figure out how I, fundraise for that. I want to, whatever it is needed to grow that so that it has a much larger impact than just the area and the region. That type of motivation, the skills and stuff like that is not exactly native to this region. So that's why we exist, is to sort of help foster that. And we knew that because we were going to have these rocket launches, exactly the type and style of it and so forth wasn't, it changed over time. And we knew that it was going to be a big inspiration. It's just like, yeah, you have an entrepreneur, because everyone, everyone knows he's an entrepreneur, right? And he's doing this amazing stuff. Like, how do you do it?
And we should point out, we're obviously referring to SpaceX's Elon Musk and the fact that SpaceX has their Starbase facility just like across the street, or even like right next to your Stargate thing. I'm going to ask you about that, like I mentioned earlier. But
hang on 1 second, because we got to run to a break, and then you can ask whatever you want. Is that fair?
No, that's fair. No. I know you've got a question coming up next. I just wanted to let people know that that's who we're talking about for these ones.
Good thinking. Okay, and speaking of talking about things, we're going to talk about our sponsor for a moment. We'll be right back.
Rick, you mentioned why you had selected Brownsville, and it seems like a bit of a really good forward looking for the nonprofit there too, and for Stargate too. I was really struck back in 2019 when I went out there for the first I guess it was for Starship unveiling way back when they just had the little, I guess I don't want to say little, but I mean, that's what it was at that time, a prototype. And I was really struck as we parked the car to see the Stargate building there.
Are you talking about Stargate or Starbase?
No, Stargate. This is before they even called it Starbase. It was just like the facility at there. But you saw the promise a bit early on, than maybe most people have. And it seems like you were in a really, you're in a really opportune location now to reach out to students, to reach out to veterans, to reach out to the folks that you're trying to raise up in the community. And I'm just curious, was it really evident, or was it like a gamble when you were thinking about the area and what the impact could be there, or was it just very clearly on on the wall, the fact that SpaceX was involved already, so this is a place that I want to set up shop for Expanding Frontiers, etc., or was there some other stuff because of the energy side of things that was already entrenched in the region?
Right. No, great question. And when I first came there, space launch from that region was not, was not being considered.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I take that back. Actually, believe it or not, there was a spaceport that was, when I first got there, I think it was an official spaceport. It was around 2000, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was these kinds of things. The fact that they haven't, the university and it was building a physics and astronomy group, the fact that there was, excitement, there were people that were kind of had this forward-looking visions that were there. You could just it was all kind of coming together. It's just like, yeah, there's something here. It is not established. It's definitely people thinking and dreaming and looking forward for this. SpaceX was definitely not there. Mm-hmm. But I believe there is something called the Willacy County Spaceport or something like that was there, and it was something that was supposed to be for engine testing and things like that, which it was pretty amazing for 2001 for thinking along those lines. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask about then. Just knowing then that you're all set up there now. Like, what's the size of the program, or does it depend on individual projects that you're working on to bring in students or veterans or future entrepreneurs, and or is there like a specific, what's the word, attendance? You have an X amount of slots for folks to go through.
Right. So it depends on the program. So I guess our entry level programs, kind of where we interface with high school students, we have something called the Space Entrepreneur Summer Academy, which I like to say it teaches or introduces students everything from Newton's laws to how to pitch a venture capital firm. So they're learning laws of gravity, and then they're also learning how to put together a pitch deck. So it's a 3-week crash course on everything you need to know to be an entrepreneur. We've had that has 30 slots. We typically only take those that are kind of in the region, and they can kind of get there. They can drive there. We have been piloting online versions. We've worked. I think we've had several. We have had a lot of interest and some involvement with students from Mexico, from the Mexican side, to partake in the program as well. So we're trying to figure out best ways of doing sort of an online virtual piece of that, so it's hybrid. So that's one piece. So we get 30 students. Matter of fact, the last year I think was just an enormous interest. That was the first time we really had to cut. We had to make cuts because we can basically only take about 30. Then we have the Space Settlement Design Tournament, which Rod actually had the opportunity to see and be involved in, which was awesome. Hopefully we can get him back again.
Anytime.
So that 200 students basically come together, and the amazing thing about this is they become part of. They basically it's an industry simulation where they, for a weekend, they break into teams of 50 and they have to put together a proposal for a space settlement. And basically got to learn how to do that, how to operate and work together with people you've never known before, most likely, and put together this proposal. And it was based on the work of several engineers. Anita Gale was one of them, who unfortunately we lost earlier this year. But Anita Gale, then CEO of the National Space Society, had created the competition format to which we worked closely with her to adapt to this fully online version. So enables us to reach more students, which is something she always wanted to do. And we were very fortunate. The last one that Rod was part of was actually sponsored by the state of Chiapas, Mexico, and we had about 200 students participate in that. So that's the entry level. That's the entry level pieces.
And that was a really exciting program. And when I did my little talk at the beginning, I couldn't figure out if they were looking at me like, oh, this is a NASA guy, or oh, who is this clown? It was one of the two, but it was a really motivated group. And as regular listeners know, I spent some time down in Ecuador about, I guess 6 months ago now, doing something similar, talking to young people. And the energy in your group is kind of similar, which is, these are people from a place where there isn't much happening in space or high tech. And, what an incredible, it's like suddenly being able to see there's a Stargate standing ahead of me that I can step through and join in this incredible adventure. And you're providing something really valuable. And I hope you can go down and do it in person someday, because that would be even more exciting, I think. I wanted to ask about, I had the Space Settlement Design Competition written down here, but you've already talked about that. The CISA Entrepreneur in Residence program for space coding, or for coding, I guess you call them space coders.
Space coders, that's right.
Yeah.
So so there's two aspects of that, but yes, we bring on, it's basically an internship program focused around coding for space industry related programs and projects. So the vision there is, as we're moving forward with the various different entrepreneurial groups that are developing their companies and so forth, they're going to need a workforce, of course, to pull in. And coding is always one piece that you can pretty much be guaranteed that these groups are going to need. So the idea is we make sure that we have a set of interns, these space coders that are working on various problems, so that as these companies need resources, we're able to provide those resources. So that's where that piece comes from. In the past, we've had them work on projects with companies that are developing stuff for the moon. Developing communication systems for satellite communication systems, various things, and also more down to earth sensor systems, but still NASA technologies and so forth. So they get the opportunity to really work on these real world problems and real world issues associated with coding for technology.
And you have another track, like a technology oriented one with your tech track. Can you describe what that? The goal of that one is as well?
Excellent. So the tech trek, we're very excited about that. We just finished the formal, the NASA piece of it. So the tech trek kind of has been an evolution of programming that we've been doing for entrepreneurs. So the whole idea is developing programming that we can get aspiring entrepreneurs working on and developing space-related technology. A couple of key things there. Aspiring entrepreneurs. We take a different approach than perhaps other incubator accelerator type programs, which kind of, and I understand why, but they require you to be kind of ahead, a little bit more ahead. Like, all right, you need to have your technology, you need to have your business plan, and then we can connect you and move you forward and all of that kind of stuff, right? But as I was saying earlier, that stuff is hard to come by here in South Texas. But we definitely have people that would love to do it if they just knew how. Mm-hmm. So that's what, so the entrepreneurial programs we develop sort of have that as the heart, and we started developing this with something called Rockets and Rigs. I think it was like 2016, 2017 is when we started doing these types of things, where we worked with NASA Johnson and looking at on-the-shelf technologies, I guess it's technologies that they would license, and trying to figure out, other uses for them. And then connecting the entrepreneurs to this technology and doing helping them with the licensing and helping them develop the tech and the business model and the business case and so forth and so on. So that went through several iterations. It was Rockets and Rigs at first. Then it became the Entrepreneur in Residence Apprenticeship Program, ERA, as we call it. And then recently that moved into the NASA Tech Trek. And really it has to do with who's funding us. But we were very excited when NASA headquarters basically said, "Hey, we really love what you're doing and really inspired by what you're doing. Why don't you run something for us?" And that's what became the NASA Tech Trek. So
just getting noticed by them is a really big deal.
So we were like, wow, this is awesome. And so the program, we moved to a 6-month program. We've adjusted things based on lessons learned, all of that kind of stuff. And we ended up with 7 teams, all developing startup companies around a NASA technology. So, one case would be, a group that was looking at technologies on the space station and said, hey, maybe we can help solve issues with portable toilet solutions using stuff that's developed on the International Space Station. So they're moving forward with that technology. You'll have other groups that are looking at virtual reality type things, how it could be stuff that was developed for astronaut training and so forth, how that could be used to enhance the welfare and lives of elderly patients in assisted living facilities. So basically what it is it's people are seeing the space technology, so there's developed for space, using their background to sort of see problems that they would like to solve and realizing, hey, there's, tech that was developed just for space, but has this use down here. So that's the tech track. We're hoping to be able to run that again next year. But that leads to our Expanding Frontiers Space Tech Pitch Competition, which is happening on November 20th. And we're going to be showcasing the companies that have gone through our programs, including the NASA Tech Trek companies. I believe all of them, all of the ones that are going to be showcased are, have a NASA technology, and they're going to be pitching live. Would love to invite anyone that wants to come down and see the event in person. Rod, Tarek, if you happen to be there on November 20th, you're more than welcome to come by and have a look.
Okay, Tarek. So the challenge has been laid out once more. We need to rent ourselves a condo down in Brownsville so we have a place to lounge around waiting for Starship launches.
I tell you, we can.
I have to tell you, and I say this, I don't know, a few times a year on this show, but I'm so envious of people now being able to do a program like this, because when I was of an age where this would have made sense, basically it was NASA, the prime contractors and big weapons makers, and the electric lab at my high school. That was kind of it. So it's really great that there's stuff like this out there now. We're going to go to one more ad break, and then we will be right back, so go nowhere. So Rick, you kind of touched on this, but other than NASA, where does most of your funding come from? Because that seems to be the bugaboo for any organization like yours.
Oh, yeah.
Keep things afloat.
Definitely. And it is, it's just the thing that one is always vigilant. Or I guess as they say in the entrepreneurial world, one is always closing. But we have, we have sources for it's, local, state, and federal sources. Donations from sponsors are very important. People that, visionaries that are seeing how this is going to impact and change the region and so forth. So, and of course, with that, I would be remiss if I didn't plug that we are looking for sponsors for our Space Tech Pitch Competition. And so sponsorships are still available. So please go to our website and, follow the links there. It's as with every nonprofit, it is it's always funding is an important issue, and we look for many sources that we possibly can.
I was really struck. I was reading about, obviously your mission. And then when I was down in Brownsville for the last couple of flights, because I was down for the big reveal, back in 2019 and then again last year. And it's hard to think that it was just last year for the first Starship launch. Now that we're on, I guess, Flight 6 coming up, which might happen in the middle of your pitch competition, Rick, because it could happen this month as we're recording this now. But I was a big, and this is going to seem like a non sequitur until it doesn't, so please bear with me. I was a really big, sci-fi fan, growing up and then in college, and still am now. And I had read a lot of the Ben Bova series of sci-fi books, and one of the entrepreneurs in one of his series is this guy Dan Randolph, entrepreneur from South Texas, from South Padre Island, where he tests all sorts of new reusable rockets and whatnot. And here we are now in real life, where you've got the expanding frontiers goal to bring that next generation together in the future with a current generation of an entrepreneur with reusable rockets in South Texas doing the same exact thing that that Ben Bova envisioned in those sci-fi books, all those years ago. And it's every now and then it strikes me. I don't think about it all the time, but it's just really strange that you have real life imitating sci-fi that was growing out of the real space race there. And I'm wondering, do you and the people involved in your program kind of see that symmetry as well? Or is it just a matter of happenstance that, this is where the land was, that's what brought SpaceX there, or this is where the university was, that's what brought you there, that kind of a thing? Is it just a matter of coincidence, or was there a bit of art or life imitating art, imitating life that you can see there?
In terms of in this particular region, you could say that, location. Just, it is a rather special region. We are on a border. We are, I think we have every single kind of port possible. Right? We have an airport, we have a seaport, we have a spaceport, right? And we have borders. So we're at the boundary of just about everything. To which we know when you're at boundaries, that's where a lot of innovation does tend to happen and so forth. It is interesting. I didn't know about Ben Bova and South Texas. I want to know more about that, of course, and try to see. It'd be interesting to know what his inspiration was for that. We happen to be the southernmost place in the United States, and so there are some arguments that's a good place to launch, to do launch and things like that. So maybe that's what Ben.
Yeah, it's really funny because it was the first time I ever heard of a place called South Padre Island, was reading those books. And then later I found out that it was like a spring break place that college students went to. And then later, that's when I'm staying in a hotel there watching the rockets lift off. And it's just a really strange feeling to see that happening there. So.
But definitely another way of looking at your question about art and reality and so forth, definitely feel that a lot of that happens. There's a lot of inspiration going both ways. Yeah. And I'll just say that back in the day when SpaceX was nosing around, was trying to think, what can we do with them? Had thought of these basic, it's like, all right, I think I have a plan for how we could potentially, the university could potentially work with SpaceX and so forth. And I was talking to one of my mentors, who is also one of my co-founders at Expanding Frontiers, Alma Miller. And I was describing, it's like, hey, I think we have a way of doing this. And she also is an avid sci-fi, right? And she looked at me, and she gave this look that Teal'c gave to Daniel Jackson. She gave this look of, indeed, right? And that made me think of Stargate, right? And the idea is like, if you think about the only way we go off world now, right now you're really seeing my science fiction background. The only way we go off world right now, we don't have Stargates, right? That doesn't exist. What we have are rockets. So really what we're developing and building down here in South Texas is the Stargate. And that's where the inspiration for the name came from. So
we should point out that Teal'c is an alien in the Stargate SG-1 TV show, very long running, and Daniel Jackson was the scientist in both the original film and the TV show. By the way, that original film is a great Kurt Russell film. Everyone should look it up, by the way. So. My wife and I bonded over Stargate. So.
Well, good Lord. Okay, we don't need to hear that inside story. Yeah. Okay. So, Rick, what do you see in the future for Expanding Frontiers? Any new programs or expansion of existing programs, resuscitation of older programs, anything?
So we have, I guess, in our strategy of looking forward, how do we continue to develop the region and so forth? I guess for almost a decade now, we have been working on this concept of an innovation corridor, space innovation corridor from Brownsville to Houston. Incarnations came up about, the Space City and why not have New Space City, things like that. And so we have been working very strategically with groups in Houston to start to develop these relationships. Matter of fact, many of our advisors and mentors for our startups are from Houston, currently in Houston, and they work with us with these startups because they have a passion for entrepreneurship. And of course, NASA Johnson is right there, right? And so it's almost like bookends to what could be a very very interesting plan for an innovation. How do we spur innovation in that entire region? So I think there's things coming up, where we would be working on that some more, especially with some funding opportunities that are going to make themselves available and so forth. And so we're working to help drive that initiative. So it will be very exciting.
Yeah. Do keep us posted when your first alumni launches something or themselves into space, from the inspiration and the skills that they learned at your program there, so it's really inspiring, the work that you're doing there.
And I have one last question. I note here that you speak Chinese. How the heck did that happen? I've tried. It's really hard.
So back in the noughties, I was a new professor, and the research work that I was working on, I had Chinese colleagues and so forth, Australian and Chinese colleagues. And through all of that, I met a very dynamic professor at Nanjing University, Professor Peng Chuhe. And he and I developed a series of summer programs in China to teach Chinese students, bring them up to speed in gravitational wave astronomy. And, we did, I think we ran a whole series of those. It was really quite an amazing time. So a lot of the China and the Chinese region and so forth. So that's kind of where, the initial inspiration for all of that came from. I guess that's, just having been immersed in it definitely helped. So that was an exciting time there.
So this just tells you about the neurodivergence in our society. I've lived in a household now for 15 years, and if you include when I was married, like 40 years, where Chinese was spoken to some extent or a lot, and I know about 3 words. And I keep trying, and every time I do, she just looks at me and goes, "Don't try." I guess
there are
that's
apps
the message
for that that'll help you. So
yeah, okay. Well, so my last question for you is, what does Expanding Frontiers need today?
What do we need? Well, we always need funding. That's, I think, the biggest piece. There's we have. We're now at a position where people, are seeking us out for, like students are seeking us out, where the programs are starting to fill up, all of this, these kinds of things. But it's the funding that helps us move forward and make these things possible.
All right. Well, that's always a good way to end. So,
and they should probably head to the website, right? If there's a donor. Okay. I just want to make sure we got to do the plug, right?
But first, I want to thank everybody for joining us for episode 135, entitled "The Spacer Pipeline." Okay, so for Tarek's question, Rick, where's the best place for us to follow EXF's progress and get more info on what we can do and how we can engage?
Excellent. Our website, www.expandingfrontiers.org.
Okay, so we will put that in the show notes, Anthony.
There you go.
If you would.
Have a look there, and there's ways of contacting us. Sign up for the sign-up sheet, and yeah.
Can I come attend as a student, even if I'm not in school anymore?
We do work with non-students, so yes, sure.
With desperate older guys like me? Okay, good. Speaking of desperate older guys, Tarek, where can we find you gaming your life away?
What? Oh. No, you can find me at space.com, as always, on the Twitters at Tarek J. Malik. Today is the last day of Chapter 5, Season 4 of Fortnite, so I will be in the live event as we're recording this in about 3 hours. So feel free to join me if you want. I'm Spacetron Plays on YouTube. And then a new season. So we're gonna go celebrate Halloween a little bit late this weekend. That's my big plan, Rod. So
Well, everybody's got to have a plan, even if it's a pathetic one like that.
Wow.
And of course,
Wow.
now I'm going to get hate mail again. Be nice to Tarek. And of course, you can find me at pilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com, and you can look up my work along with some of Rick's at nss.org, which is National Space Society. Please remember, you can always drop us a line, as many do, at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. We love getting your comments, suggestions, and ideas, and we take turns answering them, and we won't leave you stranded without an answer. New episodes of this podcast publish every Friday on your favorite podcatcher, so to make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, give us reviews, and hey, give Rick and us 5 stars or thumbs up, and you can head to our website if you wish at twit.tv/TWIS. Finally, you can get all the great programming with video streams on the Twit network ad-free on Club Twit, as well as some extras found only there. Do I have to say it again, Tarek? Even a video clip of Tarek falling out of his chair, because that's my favorite. That's my show highlight. For only $7 a month, and you'll be on the right side of the angels and helping out a good cause, keeping Twit on the air. You can follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network at Twit on Twitter and on Facebook, at twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.